know, how we would set that, in a way that was fair to everyone and didn't involve, well, your holiday, your display bleeds into mine, so therefore yours has to come down. Like that wouldn't be acceptable. But then what happens if the majority, I mean, I think it just becomes a slippery slope and brings up a lot of problems with determining the timing of things and the location of different displays.
Fran, did you have?
Well, yeah, now we're getting very complicated because we're not only have
It is
to decide.
complicated. It's a
very
complicated
complicated, but we
issue.
don't have to, I think it's becoming very complicated because we have to decide like what goes, you know, what is going, where it's going. And when we talk about, so that's point one. And point two, when we talk about the lottery, we have to consider safety.
No, that's true.
Not just precedent, but safety. And also the, you know, moving the crèche, which was a big deal. You know, with heavy pieces, and we just can't pack that up like it's you know, like it's a dollhouse and plop it someplace else.
It gets moved every year.
It's been
Twice.
proposed that we put it on the front of the Methodist church. It wouldn't go up there. It's on a trailer. It's up on a hill.
Yeah, actually, it's
Doesn't
very.
make sense. It
These
can't
guys-
go on these islands. It can't go, it needs power.
They're pros. They are pros. at
There
doing
is a
that.
lot of, and we can figure something, there's a lot of logistical issues that people are like, why don't you just put it somewhere else? Okay, you know, it's, come out there in January and take it down, it's a little cold. But, yeah, there are different considerations, and with very limited spots, you know, you're right. So, you know, if the crèche were to draw from a lottery of all available spots, well, there's one.
Yeah.
You know, right now that met the criteria I just put on, if you factor power in, but that's the only one. Arguably, maybe the other side of the truth, you know, but that's it. But I still come back to the idea of there being, you know, some precedent and having, you know, so you apply for one of the spots that are available.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, like, you know, and.
So you're saying-
Fairness not being a factor, I think
I
section
think
point,
that-
it doesn't matter if it's fair, there's a lot of laws that are not
That's right.
Yeah.
fair.
So
I can rattle those off, all right?
I,
But-
before you make a decision based on that, you really need to speak to the town attorney, because that is not my understanding, is that there is a fairness factor that has been in some of the court decisions.
As long as it's not discriminatory, that's the whole point. The
Well,
fairness comes into, is the purpose of not being fair trying to discriminate?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not about, if the purpose of fairness is just to, one needs power and one doesn't.
Make everyone
You know,
happy.
so I'm just saying, I don't represent this board, I happen to be an attorney, but I'm trying to not wear that hat, but I can't help but say, look, life isn't fair, therefore laws aren't fair, it's just, are they legal, are they constitutional, and is there a good purpose behind not being fair?
Is
And
it
that's the whole point.
Is it consistently applied? Is it applied fair across all groups?
Right.
Once you make the rules, a lot of it comes into not excluding and not,
Right.
and 100% agree. But, you know, my understanding from reading it, there's a lot of instances where something is in the same place every single year, and I can't believe it's not challenged. If it has to be a round robin thing.
You can bet it's been challenged
Right.
and
And it's lost.
Right.
Right.
So the Methodist church is the one that's across from Caroluzzi's, the one that has the little kind of sloped front yard?
No. It's
no.
across from English Park.
Methodist Church across English Park.
So
there,
that's right next to the square.
Where they have all the plastic
wall, and
dinners.
they put, there's like a walkway goes around and up.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, what was that?
Yeah, so the wall, probably a football,
Yeah.
their lawn.
So it can't, I'm just wondering, it can't be put there, it's too big, there's not enough power, it's a hill, is that why it can't be
It's
put
on
there?
it is
On a
built
slope?
on a trailer, and you would literally have to drive a truck up, well, I don't think you could, I don't know if you could with a ramp, or, not, logistically, it would not be very practical to pull a trailer up on top of that, of its weight, and then remove it at the end of the year,
Okay.
or at the end of the season.
So you couldn't like back it up and then move it
It's
off?
a wall.
I'm
It's
trying to
as high
find a
as
picture
the wall.
for you, Mary, there's a.
As high as the
wall,
steeple,
and then
with a
there's
sidewalk
bench.
on either side, and the sidewalk would not be wide enough to back it into.
Okay, I'm just curious,
As
because,
mentioned, it's
I mean-
private land.
Right, exactly.
But the
Has to go
church
across
had,
the
the other church, or that church had offered to have it there at one point?
As an alternative if everything was, but
I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm just curious, because I mean, it seemed like this
If
is
they
a
choose to
picture-
erect their own nativity display, it would be a good spot for it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it'd be a
If
pretty
they-
good spot for it.
If they want to erect, I've seen Mary's erect one, but this is about having it as a cultural icon on public space.
I pass. I was
Okay.
thinking of something else.
So you're playing
Oh,
bridge, I guess.
yeah, what I was gonna say is if we move it to that spot, well, we can just disband, because, it's solved. We're not, no one's using, no one's using
Other
public property.
people can still apply to use it,
Yeah.
still have to have a policy.
So then there's nothing to fight over, if we just move it to, but we don't wanna do that, because then, you know,
Actually, if this whole issue had ever gone before planning and zoning, they probably would have turned it down a long time ago. It's not consistent. It's something the selectmen decades ago just decided we're gonna allow this to be on public property, because Richie Straighten pointed out at one of the earlier meetings that it didn't used to be. It used to be on church property, the original creche. It moved sometime after 1970, I think he said, to the town green. And planning and zoning said, all right, it's their deal, but it actually is non-conforming as it exists right now. If this committee came back and said, you know what, we can't resolve this without offending people, we're just gonna suggest that every display be on private property, there wouldn't be any. That we would go back to planning and zoning's restrictions that exist today.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't, you know, they have specific allowances for certain types of lawn signs, like for nonprofits, like the spaghetti dinner, things like that, the Scotty Fund, temporary period of time, not encompassing an entire season. And that's probably what would take effect if this committee were to make a recommendation that no religious displays be on town property.
And that is how it has been handled in several surrounding towns in Connecticut, probably because they didn't want to deal with the potential lawsuits that can come from it and
Yeah.
spending a lot of money on legal entrapments. I'm going to guess. I wasn't sitting on those committees, but definitely that has happened in many surrounding towns, so I'm going to make a guess that that's probably why.
well, we don't wanna hear that word lawsuit. We wanna resolve this in a very
Right.
friendly way, you know?
So then we probably shouldn't talk about pretending that something isn't religious when we all know that it really is. That's not very
I'm
friendly.
going by the Supreme Court decisions,
Just pointing
which
that out
Polly
too.
clarified.
And I think that sometimes, you know, to be devil's advocate, sometimes elected officials or volunteer officials on committees that make these decisions that are not legally trained are scared by people who threaten lawsuits.
Yeah.
And
I'm not
so-
threatening a
No, I'm saying.
By any means, nor
No,
have
no,
I.
this
Let me
wasn't
just get that on the record, because
Okay.
I am
I
tired
wasn't
of being
dir-
told that I.
I wasn't
as a
directing
part
it
of
to-
direct-
I wasn't
appreciate
answering.
that. No, but
I
let me say
apologize
it,
if
I'm
you
tired
took
of
it
that.
the
But
way-
back when this whole thing started, back
Nobody
in
threatened the
December,
lawsuit.
there was talk and people got upset.
Okay,
Nobody
one
threatened
at a
us.
time, please.
The message was not very clear. People heard the word lawsuit and NAA, not the NAA, ACLU.
ACLU.
And people got, scared and upset. And, but maybe that's not the message you wanted to give, but that's the message that some people heard.
But you can
And
hear
so,
what you hear, that's never the
Well,
message
then
that was
where did
brought out
people-
there.
Where did people hear this from?
I
So there was
think
a-
I can answer that
there
question,
was
but
a
let's
mu-
not
there
do
was
it
a
on
muddled
camera.
message. There was a muddled message from your group back in
There was not.
December.
There
And
was
well, then why did people get the impression that if we didn't do something fast, we would be sued? And right away that made
Because,
people
Fran, they didn't
angry.
like the idea that something else was going on the lawn, and a lot of.
That's not true.
Yes,
That
it
is
is.
not true.
Things were
People
not
here are very
done
reasonable. People here
in
just are
order.
very
Things were
reasonable.
not
Yeah.
done appropriately.
That's a different thing. That has nothing to
Right.
do with
That's
lawsuits.
That tied into.
No one said anything about a
It was
lawsuit.
instant-
It was not.
Well,
Can I just
The
say,
American
can I just,
Atheist Association threatened the town.
They did not.
That if the town
We didn't make it up.
refused to
read all
do
the-
this, they
Okay.
would be forced to look into suing the
Yeah.
town.
I would
No,
like
they
to-
said you need to comply with the law.
I would just like to
I
apologize.
wasn't coming at you.
Using the word
I just
lawsuit
mean to
because
put that down.
I was addressing your comparison to towns around us.
Yes.
That perhaps the reason that they didn't, because they were worried about being sued, and I was saying, well, there's the flip side of that. Perhaps since I was not present and you were not present,
Yes.
perhaps the reason could have equally been that they just don't want to deal with and they don't understand that there wouldn't be any successful lawsuits.
That is also
Okay?
possible.
And so they just wanted to avoid it. And I think the fact that we have all of these citizens volunteering to be here to resolve it says, we're not afraid of lawsuits. We're, you know, what we want is we want our town to be together, come together and make a decision that works, but that nobody feels strong-armed or feels like, oh, if we, you know, we have to be politically correct.
Yeah.
That's a problem for me. I want us all to get along, and you know what? Somebody's not gonna be happy.
Right.
That's right.
You know, that's life. Somebody's not gonna be happy.
There was a letter from, Dan, do you remember the name of the organization?
It was the Atheist Association.
It-
There were
from-
several letters.
Yeah.
Based in Wisconsin or someplace, that had read about it in the paper, and they did say, you must open this up to other displays, or we will consider.
Yeah. So
So
the word
that- so
got
that- yeah,
out,
that-
people got upset, and it didn't add to.
And it
good
just so
public relations.
happened to
What does that
surface
work?
after someone's application did
Well,
not
that's
meet criteria.
That's irrelevant. I mean, it's a matter of law.
That was the timing, and that's what got people's panties in a bunch.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I wanna back up a little bit and just give us some perspective on this. This is not a new issue. This goes back decades, many decades. And some towns have been able to continue displays under certain conditions, to the point that Holly and Tim made. Other towns have been told, no, you can't do that because it is not constitutional. You know, it's very complicated. It depends, there are Supreme Court decisions and there are lower federal court decisions from the 9th and 5th districts. You know, some cases allow a creche as long as it's with a Santa Claus and lollipops. You know, it depends on the context. So nobody on this committee, including me, can make a blanket statement that anything we do here is constitutional. We're gonna have to speak to the attorney and weigh the,
Yeah.
as I'm sure Holly would agree, we're gonna have to weigh the factors and try to make the best guess we can. So I think that what this last 20 minutes of conversation boils down to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is can the creche stay in its present location because that's where it's been, basically?
Yes.
Not just, that's where it's been,
But in any
but
thing.
the other thing, well,
But-
no, yeah.
no,
Right now, the
we're
only
talking-
thing that
The only
has
thing
any
that is
precedent
the
more
issue
than
is the
a year
Yeah,
is the
right.
crash.
And so does the precedent matter, or not?
And
And
likewise,
safety.
there was another display last year. If that display applied again this year and one at the same spot, should this spot go, if you apply by X date, whatever the date we decide is, should that spot go to them first? If they do not apply, and then it becomes open
Okay,
as an available spot.
okay.
And it would have to be not just applied to the crash.
What if they want the spot by the tree?
No, so going forward, if that spot was vacated, if we didn't apply. for
Okay,
it,
okay, but what you're saying is that the creche would maintain that spot
Yes.
unless they voluntarily left, correct?
As could the banner that was there last year.
Yeah, let's.
Oh, okay, all right, well, that's the essence of the question.
Almost, first selection goes to whoever's had it the previous year, if they apply by X. If they
Okay.
don't, then it becomes available, it goes back into the pool of available spots.
Okay, all right,
Do we
so,
vote on that?
no,
It's
no.
not legal consultation.
It's a question.
We have to
It's
wait
not
for,
yeah, it's a question.
Okay, so can you reserve a spot / grandfather a spot? Blue Star was given as an example that it's,
That's, I would have to disagree, because that's sort of like the Doughboy statue, it's a permanent fixture. It's a permanent installation, it's not a
okay.
temporary holiday
You
based.
could argue there's room on that spot for other banners,
Oh, yeah, as long as it doesn't impede traffic, sure, yeah, that's
Right.
that's possible.
but we were said that spot wasn't available because it was the Blue Star spot, so.
Who wants to take
And
up?
I don't
You
want
know,
to.
I want
I don't
to,
want to.
yeah, I mean,
That would be
That's
kind of
the whole-
sacrilegious to
Right.
put something there, you know?
Agreed.
yes, Yeah, I agree. I just brought it up as devil's advocate because we in our own hand have the precedent. And remember something, I mean, it's about, not just about the fact that it's precedent, but there are other factors in why, if we decide as a committee that like the creche could stay there, it wouldn't just be about precedent. I think there's lots of factors that go into it, and including it needs power. It's
Safety.
It's safety, you know,
Logistic size.
just all of that stuff, I think, and plus it's visibility. I mean, and I think you have to think about what the town wants. I mean, I think all of that, and I really, you know, I commend everybody for coming here because it's not easy to share your opinion and to get shot down. Listen, on social media, I get beat up a lot, you know, and.
Everybody's taking
What is
shots.
that like?
Everybody's taking.
You know,
You know what the easiest solution is to get off.
And I think I'm being respectful, but, you know.
It's cesspool.
It is, so I mean, you know, thank you, everybody, for even having the nerve to speak up.
No, we appreciate your expertise, Holly, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so what are the questions? Do we need to have answered before you can make a reasoned?
Are we able to limit the number of displays that would appear on any one piece of approved property?
Okay,
It would depend on size.
We have to get legal,
Yeah.
That's a fair question, like if you, logistically, if we only
Size,
had
placement.
10 spots,
Yeah.
and we had 12 applications,
yeah,
you're excluding somebody, not by a choice to exclude, just by you only have 10 spots.
Yeah,
And where does the law come into that? Where, is it the first 10? Is it,
yeah.
I think that's a good question, because we do have limited spots.
Okay, so limit of approved spots on a location.
And-
Which gives further reason to try to get
That
more
was my
spots,
question, yes.
because then
And
it
that would
helps
be
alleviate that
size, you have to
concern.
worry
But
about size, so.
I just want to get the gist of this, and then I think the attorney can
yeah.
pretty much be able
Well,
to.
we're gonna give him a nice comfy chair right there in the middle. So,
Put it right there, right on camera.
yep,
I'll watch the video.
and we're not allowed to, that's right.
well, yeah, right.
A question I'd have for the attorney as well is when you get into this lemon test, who is performing that lemon test on each different display? If they pass the lemon test in previous years, obviously.
Who's the judge?
It is, yes, who is looking at that? You know, somebody comes along and they want to put something up that, you know, that in the public's opinion wouldn't pass the lemon. Who makes that determination?
By the way, why is it called a
Court
lemon
does.
test? Is
Because it
that,
was just, that was the plaintiff's name.
was that the
Was
case?
Lemon.
Lemon
Yeah.
versus Kurtzman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, the lemon test is not applied by you or me or our first selectman. It would be if somebody challenged it, and that's how the court would apply.
And the word is reasonable.
Right, and it's always a reasonable person standard for anything, by the way. So what would a reasonable person say,
Yeah.
you know, Santa Claus represents? What does a reasonable person say a crucifix represents? I mean, those are the things. So think about it in terms of what reasonable people would believe.
Mhm. Okay. All right, what else?
I'd like to address something that Robin said about the title of this committee, that it's, and I said it should be proper use of public property. And something I've mentioned to you, and I've mentioned to a few people, the art displays, public property. Nobody in town had any input into that. You know, who said that art could go on public property, all those sculptures? And we already had two waves of that.
Mhm.
You know, it's the same thing, it's the same issue.
No, it's not.
Proper use of public property.
It's not-
Who
not at all.
decided that that art goes on public property?
The Board of Selectmen did, and it's not a constitutional issue. Religious displays are a constitutional issue. You
But it's
cannot
still
compare.
proper use of public property. Who put those up and, you
We
know, I
can- we
had
can-
to, that's public property.
Yeah,
Taxpayers'
it's not the,
dollars.
it's, okay, your opinion
that
is noted,
related?
but it's not the same.
It's not related.
No, not related at all.
I agree, I think this committee was formed specifically to address religious displays. on
Okay, I
public
just
property.
wanted to bring this up because a lot of people have a problem with, you know, public property, how are we using it? And then they see, now we have empty cement slabs that are
Yeah,
safety
those are,
hazards.
yeah, this,
Outside
let's,
of-
why don't we stay on the topic? Those are
Okay.
gonna be removed, by the way.
Okay, but I'm just
And
saying
it's
that we're
that-
talking
okay, there-
about proper use of public property.
there
And I
are-
think the two issues are related.
No, they're not related whatsoever. You go do your internet search, you will not find a single Supreme Court case about somebody's sculpture being on public property.
No,
In
I'm talking
fact,
about local governance here. Who decided that that art goes where it did?
I said that was decided by the Board of Selectmen. They permitted Bethel Arts, an independent nonprofit, to put those up. So if you want to talk about that with the Board of Selectmen, you're welcome to do so. But that's not
Okay, I
the
just wanted to
purview of
bring it
this.
up because I think the two issues are related.
Okay, I
Not
believe
religious,
that,
but it is proper use of public property.
okay, yeah, well, this is this specifically
Okay.
as religious.
All right,
If
all right.
if we were all debating sculptures, we
No,
wouldn't
but I
be
mean,
having this
I'm just
conversation.
addressing her point, Robin's point. It's proper use of public property.
We're talking not just for the holiday season.
No, we
We're
are talking for the holiday season,
Well, what
we're talking
about-
about religious displays.
What
That's
about
the
around
purpose.
Easter? That's a religious time.
Right, so
What
if a
if somebody
religious-
wants to put up
Okay,
who
well,
knows what?
An Easter bunny.
okay, then if the Board of Selectmen would like to expand the purview of this committee, it could do so, but the way this was structured by the Board of Selectmen was to deal with the holiday period from Thanksgiving past New Year's Day and specifically religious
Specifically
displays. So that's,
that period of time, not what goes out there. For instance, if people want to,
nope.
have a bonfire to, bring in spring or whatever they do.
Mhm.
Summer solstice or
Yeah.
something.
It's very interesting that these issues are being raised when, to the best of my knowledge and being in town for 45 years, nobody has ever asked for that. Nobody's
No.
ever asked to put up an Easter display, bonfire, anything like that.
But because they can, they will.
They may.
Well,
You're
yeah, because
absolutely
this
right.
issue has come up, and
Yeah.
this is exactly why
Some people
some,
don't use for spike
some
forward.
some municipalities in the United
And
States have
protect
said,
the town, you need, I feel that you should keep that in mind, to protect the town.
I think we had well, unfortunately, we weren't there at our last meeting, but we had a lengthy discussion about that at our last meeting.
About,
Should
About
policy-
the amount of time, and if this is one holiday season and this is another holiday season, and which groups can put stuff, excuse me, long day. Which groups can
And
put
the
things
overlap
in
of
different
which
locations,
what
in different, that's right, that's what Diana was speaking to.
Yeah.
We talked about Easter, we talked about summer, we talked about all the different times of year. We looked up how many holidays there are on the calendar when you talk about all inclusive of all religions and all,
Right.
and it's overwhelming. So I agree with you that that is something that needs to be decided. Are we just talking about these months? And then are we opening ourselves up to a challenge? If somebody wants to put something up there, that I defer to the Board of Selectmen, that's their call, as I understand it. But, yeah, it has to be part of the conversation.
So-
This is
Is that-
complicated.
Well, that's an
Yeah.
interesting question. Is the purpose of this committee to recommend only on the holidays, what we're defining as the November, December, January? So
yeah.
it's not, so if, would create, and I guess it's a question for the attorney, would creating a policy that addresses only those couple months be problematic for anybody who applied the rest of the, you know, would you apply a different set of standards to somebody who applied to use Ramadan or Easter or
Yeah.
whatever?
Why can't the same standards be applied
Why not
once,
just
once
have a
you,
standard?
Yeah.
once you have, if you've decided you're gonna use the lemon test and you're gonna use precedent, you're gonna use
Right, once you have a policy.
logistics, I think it works anytime. I don't think
Yeah.
it necessarily has to be, oh, let's have an Easter committee, you know.
It could be a concern to just have a policy for those couple months.
So as the
You may need
committee
to have a
for
religious display
religious
policy
displays, we
or
should be
process.
considering that.
Yeah, good question.
Remember, we're just making a recommendation. The
Absolutely.
Board of Selectmen are gonna decide, whether or not to adopt any or,
Mhm.
none of our recommendations.
How advisory are we? 50%, 2%, 95%?
Advisory.
You're
We're
right,
here, we're spending our time here. How-
it's a yes or no question, it's
I
advisory.
just would like to know.
I don't know, I can't answer that.
All right.
It's gotta go to the Board of Selectmen for a vote.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is it just an advisory committee?
Yeah.
Because under our charter and under state law, the Board of Selectmen has to create, this would be effectively an ordinance. And that's where the authority lies. Let me tell you something. If I could push this monkey on you guys and say, all right, hey, whatever you want to do is great with me, I'd do it in a heartbeat
I bet you would.
and let you guys take the heat.
I bet you would.
So, that answer your question?
Careful what you ask for, yeah.
Yeah. All right, any other questions you can think of?
well,
want to make summarize something. I think we can assume that we have the creche. I'm not saying that we have the creche where it is, but as far as the number of displays, there's the creche, possibly an atheist banner, or whatever you want to do. There might be, maybe the Jewish population here will want to put up a menorah. I don't think we have to imagine that we're going to have a zillion displays. You know, I think we're making this a little bit too complicated.
And I would disagree with you and say that I think we have to be prepared for anybody and have a precedent, and have
But
a
looking at the
established.
history of this town, it isn't like this has been, people have been knocking on the door wanting to.
Perhaps
yeah,
now
this-
people,
Maybe now, but we have to be reasonable.
Well,
perhaps people will be encouraged
What does the
to-
history of this
Right.
town suggest?
So we
If
should be
do
ready
any
for
kind of
that.
study, what is it, what do we, you know, if we look at our history, you know,
Well-
what can we expect? So I don't think that we're going to have 50 different groups saying, we want some real estate. I mean, we may, but I tend to doubt it. And by assuming that, and then talking about Easter, we're just making it much more complicated. Let's just try to keep it simple.
I disagree.
And,
I think we need to cover all of our bases. That's what we're here to do.
We can also limit our jurisdiction. We can also limit it.
You can't limit it by saying that we're only going to talk
And
about
then,
these 3 religious orientations
no,
and we're
no,
not
no,
going to talk about
no,
any others.
No, what I'm saying is limit what we're going to address.
It might be
Limit what we're
logistically
going to
limited by the
address.
number of spots that are available.
Yeah,
That
yes.
comes back to a previous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we're making it
let's-
too complicated. We can limit what we're going to address. I'm not
That-
talking about limiting the number of groups.
That is,
Right.
I'm not talking about
that
that.
that is another question that we should pose to the attorney and explore that, whether opening it up. See, the whole premise, the whole reason we're here is that, and by the way, let me digress just for a moment. This is not a new issue in Bethel either. My first Christmas here in office, I've been in office for a week, and a Jewish couple came to see me and said, you know, if we're gonna have a creche on that thing, I want to put up a menorah. So you know what I said? I said, okay, great, propose one.
Yeah,
And they didn't do it
Yeah.
because they were testing the waters. But this comes up every year. And, you know, in a way, Bethel has existed in a little bit of a time warp where we've been shielded from this, and the rest of the world has gone through these discussions and the pain of coming up with a policy, whether it's yes or no, a long time ago. We're going through it for the first time. But, you know, to the point that's been made, yeah, these will come up.
yeah.
There will be challenges.
I was standing next, at the creche dedication, I was standing next to a fellow who's Jewish, and I said, where's your menorah? And he said, we just haven't gotten it together like you Christians have. We don't have anybody sponsoring us, we don't have any display. We should do it, we will do, but we haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
And that's
So it isn't like we
organization.
said,
Get it in there.
you can't, you know, be here.
Well, that's sort of, you have to ignore the
So-
historical precedent in that sense too. Things change over time.
Yeah.
don't they?
And, but my point is, nobody was saying you can't have a menorah. He said, we just haven't gotten it together.
Understand that.
So, and it takes effort. It takes
It takes
effort.
a lot of effort.
Volunteers and Mark, Tim, you know, you can speak to that. So, money, yeah, funds and
Well,
resources.
to the first part of your statement just now, though, that it looks like we have the creche.
No, no, I didn't mean that. What I
Well,
meant
what I was going to say is that's something that you have to
No,
determine.
I'm
Something
not
you can
saying
show
that
is
looks like we
going,
have the
yeah.
crush.
Apply
I'm
for it
saying
annually.
that if we're talking about the different possible displays, I
Yes.
don't think that we have to imagine 50 different groups knocking down the door. We will have possibly more, but I think that if we think that where are we going to put all these groups?
Yeah.
We might be imagining a situation that really will not happen.
But it'd be great to be prepared for it in case it does.
Well, here's a application that
But
came
what's
in.
reasonable? I mean, we could be bombed by some country, but you know, how.
It really doesn't have
What are you
anything to do
saying,
with the
Matt?
scope of this conversation.
I mean, like, how reasonable
No,
is it
hold
to
on,
expect
hold on,
that
hold on.
50 different groups are
Hold
going to
on.
knock on the door saying,
Hold
you know,
on.
it's-
Fran, please. I want to pose another what if to you, because this is real. One of the applications we received last December, which was withdrawn, was a Festivus pole. And they wanted it on the green with the creche. Is that acceptable?
I don't know enough about Festivus pole.
It's a pole.
Isn't it just like a, is it like a?
Like, I don't know what the name,
What is
Well, that comes down to
What
it,
is
how,
the
is it
fest- what is
religious,
the
non-religious,
Festivus
do we have to allow non-religious if we allow religious?
Yeah.
Would you allow somebody to just put a pole up in July, just because they feel like putting a pole there?
Yeah.
Would you allow somebody to put,
I have no idea what a Festivus pole is.
Yeah, I don't know.
You were not a Seinfeld fan,
It's
huh?
a joke.
Yeah, the
It's
festival.
a parody, it's a religious parody.
And so in my opinion, if, as a reasonable person, I would say, it doesn't make sense to me to allow displays that would be mocking or undermining
Yeah.
another religious, I wouldn't put two religions that are so, like, in my mind, I'm thinking Satanism and Christianity probably shouldn't be next door to each other,
Right.
But you
okay?
can't curtail freedom of speech.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm just saying, I don't think it's reasonable to have, or a sign saying, let's kill all the Christians right
Okay.
next to that's all I'm saying.
So just a question I would want to add and come up numerous times in my mind is, how do we determine that?
Yes.
It would have to be an objective decision. So where do we get the objective, not, like, saying reasonable is a very subjective statement. So I would want to know from him how, in so many different areas, criteria will have to be
Yeah.
created that is fair and equal and can be applied to all these different circumstances.
Well, I think to Holly's point,
Determine objective decision with criteria.
do we have the right to say, oh, this is disrespectful, we can't put it up? My understanding, as I'm sitting here, is no, we would not.
well, if this
But I don't
says
know.
the primary effort is to advance or prohibit,
Right.
if the question would be, do we, if it is,
Yeah.
really is the primary objective to celebrate or represent or whatever somebody's organization that you're trying to include, or is the primary objective of a reasonable person, not an extreme person, but a reasonable person, is the primary objective to try to mock, attack,
Yeah.
dissuade, otherwise,
I think that's pretty clear.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think,
See, but I don't
as a
think that
Seinfeld
Festivus
fan,
is
it
mocking.
literally was a joke, right? I mean, it was defined as a joke.
But it wasn't mocking Christianity or
No,
any other
it was
religion.
mocking the holiday season, just in general.
Okay, but-
The craziness of the holiday
Okay,
season.
but who gets to the
What group does
point,
it represent?
who gets to make that decision?
I guess a reasonable person. We have a room of
How
reasonable
would you
people, we'll
define-
come together
Who
once a year.
don't agree with each other.
I think it's
all
hard-
season?
It's a hard question to answer.
Once a year, we'll come in and vote
But
on
you
the
know, the thing
applications
is,
if they're not.
By the way, there is a legal definition for reasonable person,
Reasonable.
by the way. It's not just what I think is reasonable, what you think is reasonable. There actually is, and Marty can speak to that. That could be a question like, what is the reasonable person standard? He can tell us what it is.
We're talking about being friendly and neighborly, maybe reasonable, is, friendly and neighborly and being respectful is part of this reasonableness. And I think we have to, I see you're smiling, Diana.
I'm smiling at Diana. My
Um,
name is Danielle.
Danielle, that is part of it, that we wouldn't want to hurt anybody else's feelings who are our neighbors. And
Sadly, that
would-
didn't
That
happen.
would be part of this trying to decide whether something is reasonable.
You take it away, when you have
Diana?
standards, when you put standards in place, you take away the personal part of it. You take away Danielle Monroe wanted this, and Holly Heslin wanted that. When you have a list of what the standards are, then it's not what I liked or what Danielle liked. It's what the community had decided was appropriate, and it fits within those guidelines. So you take away this, because since there wasn't a policy this holiday season, it became personal, and it was ugly, both on social media
Yeah.
and, in person. So I think this committee, the whole purpose is to put guidelines in place
Mhm.
that takes that away. That's my
Diana, did you have a comment?
I'm gonna pass.
You're playing bridge too? You pass? All right.